Minnesota. This is Christie Thompson with Christie Legal. I am a divorce and custody mediator and paralegal in Minnesota. And I apologize for the confusion in the beginning. The system was a little bit wonky when starting up. Normally for my divorce and separation seminar for military folks and veterans, normally I have a panel of veterans, and myself and Cathy Hietala both have connections to the military as well, and Cathy will explain her connection. And my connection is that I grew up in a Navy family for the last 12 years of my childhood. I went to 13 different schools. I, had a sticker on my car that allowed me to get on the base, and I felt like really important. And I shopped at the BX and hung out with some of the squids when I was in 12th grade, which looking back was not maybe a good idea. And so anyways, getting back to the reason that we're here. So normally David Jamison talks about mortgages. He is a divorce certified mortgage banker, and he's also a VA certified mortgage banker. He had a family event to deal with, and his contact information will be in the chat box. And then Ken Colston is also usually with us. He is a real estate agent, and he is a veteran of both the Army and the Marines. And he had some last minute showings that he tried to coordinate to not happen now, but they are. And I did forget to say that David Jamison is a veteran of the Minnesota Army National Guard. And okay, so there's all of the intro kind of stuff. And so Cathy, why don't you do a short intro for yourself?
Thank you. I'm Cathy Hietala, Vice President of the Terrio Group here in Minnesota. I'm a financial advisor as well as a fiduciary. And I have many connections to the military. My older son has been in the National Guard for now 14, 15 years. My brothers both served in the Marines. My dad served in the Army. My stepdad served in 2 wars in the Army. So a lot of military people in my family, a nephew that served in Iraq, 2 tours. So I have a passion for helping those out that have helped us, in so many ways defend our country. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Cathy. So to give you guys some information about the legal parts of divorce, there are 3 main groups of things that you do when you're divorcing. And the last one you also do when you're handling a custody case, because, not everybody gets married anymore. So we'll talk about that at the end. So when you're divorcing, the first thing you're going to do is divide the assets. And your assets, your marital assets, are everything that you purchased or accrued during the marriage. So that could include houses, rental properties, cars, boats, ATVs, snowmobiles, jewelry, household goods, all those fun things. And then there are financial accounts. So whatever you accrued in your financial account during the marriage, that is a marital asset. What you accrued in your financial accounts before the marriage, that is a non-marital asset because it is premarital. Cars or houses or things like that that you purchased before the marriage are non-marital as premarital as well. And so those things we will put in a different part of the divorce documents, and they will not be divided, except when there's a house that you purchased before the marriage. The person who did not purchase the house does have a marital interest in the non-marital house. And that's something that we'll talk about if that's your situation. But just to let you know that that it's a situation. And so when we divide the assets, we are not going to literally. So the rule of law in Minnesota is that divorcing parties share the assets 50-50. That doesn't mean that each party, each piece of property gets divided in half. Like, we don't want to cut the house in half. Then it's not really worth much. But what it means is we're going to put all those assets together. And let's say you have $500,000 worth of assets. That means each of you should walk away with about $250,000 of value of assets. Of course, you guys can agree to an unequal division of the assets. However, you do have the right to an equal division of the assets. And what I'll do is I'll start by asking each of you, what would you like to walk away with? And then we'll see how it all pans out when you are each walking away with what you want. See if we need to adjust things, or, if it is unequal and you're both fine with it, then just be prepared to possibly state that during a court hearing. And so after we've divided the assets, then we need to divide the debts. Sometimes that's an even less fun thing to do than dividing the assets, because it doesn't matter who created that debt. You guys are married. And in case you didn't know what marriage means, it means that you are financially responsible for the other person. So if either of you created credit card debt, student loan debt, any type of bank debt, or if either of you created, didn't pay your income taxes for any of the years that you were married, or if either of you owe a past due child support. And I think that's all the different types of debts. I can't think of any more right now. Whatever the debt is, it belongs to both of you. So you're both responsible for it. However, the level of responsibility is determined based on ability to pay. So what ability to pay means is how much income does each party earn in relation to the other. So if someone earns 100,000 a year and someone earns 50,000 a year, the person who earns 100,000 a year is going to pay twice as much of the total marital debt as the other person, because he or she earns twice as much and has twice as much ability to pay. Now, if you guys want to divide the debts in a different way, you can certainly do that. However, you do have the right to have the debts divided by ability to pay. And then after we've dealt with the money, if you folks have children, then we have to handle, what we're going to do with the children. And sometimes this is the most difficult part. However, if you take the emotion out of it, it can actually be very simple. You are going to think about what are the best interests of the children. And you're going to factor in things like each of your work schedules. If one or both of you needs to be out of town fairly often, if there's, who has been taking care of the kids most of the time during the marriage. So we're going to think about all those things. You guys might actually already be sharing custody of the kids. Probably half my clients who have children are already living separately by the time they come to me. So they're already sharing the kids. And so, I just say, hey, so how is it working? Do you guys want to do this same thing? Or do you want to do something differently, for the next 30 years, not 30 years, next 13 years, or however long you have left. And so it's a conversation that the three of us are going to have, because when you work with me, it's going to be both parties and me. It's not going to be, like you call your attorney and the attorney calls the other person's attorney and all the back and forth. The three of us are going to talk about it, and you guys are going to reach a decision. And so there are two types of custody. The first type is legal custody. 90+% of the time, both parties have joint legal custody. It's very difficult to not have a parent have legal custody of his or her children. The parent would have to be extremely mentally or physically abusive or neglectful. Then there's physical custody. And that's when people say they're in a custody battle, that's what they're talking about. And so there are two types of physical custody in Minnesota. The first is joint custody. And that means that both parents have the kids an equal amount of time, approximately. And there's a lot of ways to do that. You could have, the parent A has the kids Monday, Tuesday, parent B has the kids Wednesday, Thursday, and then they just switch every other weekend having the kids. You could do it Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. When the kids are older, you could do it 1 week on, 1 week off. That's usually not recommended for little kids not to see their other parent for so many days by psychologists. But there's a lot of different ways you could do it. And, we just need to see what might work with you guys' work and life schedules. And it doesn't have to be exactly 50-50 if you guys don't want it to be. And we can still call it joint. So, basically, when you guys are working together, you can be a lot more flexible and you can customize your divorce agreement a lot more. And so also when we're handling the kids, we're going to make sure, who's covering their insurance, medical, dental, who is going to have the main residence, who's going to get the tax deduction for the kids, how you guys are going to pay for their medical and dental expenses other than the premium and their extracurricular activities. And we're going to, figure out if there are other agreements you guys would like to reach now so that, 2 years from now, when you're not as likely to be amicable, that you already have agreements in your divorce documents about how to handle things that might come up. And we'll get into things that might come up, when you guys are actually working with me. Because if we handle things now that could be a problem later, I'm going to save you even more money because later on, you guys are going to be less likely to agree. So you're going to have to lawyer up. Lawyers charge a lot more than I do, and you're going to have to get the court involved, which means it's going to be a longer process. So that is the legal stuff in a nutshell. And so we're going to hop over to the financial stuff. One of the assets you have during your marriage is, financial accounts. And so Cathy is going to talk about first how she helps you during the divorce process with your financial accounts. Thanks, Cathy.
Thank you, Christie. It's a lot of good information. I work with both active military and veterans going through the divorce process because there are some considerable differences. So while working with you, I, will sit down with you, ask you what your goals are, what assets you have, what you'd like to have, and see how we can work together to split those assets the most amicable way, as well as following and making sure that you're aware of all the changes and differences on the military side of things. You want me to elaborate on some of those right now, Christie?
Oh, yes. If you could please, explain, how military retirements are vastly different. And because I never even knew all that stuff.
Okay. So some of the main differences I think are important to note are, first we'll start by looking at your TSP, your thrift savings plan. And if you made contributions while you were in a combat zone, those contributions are federally tax exempt. So you don't pay taxes on them even when you take the distributions. However, the gains on those are taxable. So in the circumstance that, say, you were in a combat zone, maybe the Gulf War 30 years ago, and that account has been growing for 30 years, and now you need to split that asset up with your soon-to-be ex-spouse, that those gains are going to be taxed. So even though you might see tax exempt on paper, make sure you're aware that you don't want to give half of it away and then have to use your half to eat up the taxes. So that's something to note. Second of all, another one is to know that your account can be frozen. So as soon as the divorce papers are filed with the courts, they can freeze your accounts. So you can no longer take out withdrawals or loans from that account. They'll let you pay money back, but they won't let you take any money out. So if you're looking at the divorce process that could possibly last a year or two, you may want to look at taking out a loan from that, or if you're over 59 and a half, take out some withdrawals now. You'll have to pay taxes on it. But if you need that money to live on for the next year or two and have to get at it, it's something important to know and to plan for. And another thing is a qualified domestic relations order that most people are aware of, that what's called a quadro. It's the court order to split up your 401ks, your IRAs. Well, that doesn't work with your military benefits. The military has a separate plan called the Qualified Retirement Benefit Court Order, and it must, the documents must expressly relate it to the thrift savings plan. So that's important to know as well. And another big thing is the beneficiaries. Too often I see people leave off beneficiaries and just leave it blank. So unless you want to pay your soon-to-be ex-spouse, your funds, then leave it blank. But if you're in the middle of a divorce, my guess is if something happens to you, you don't want to leave everything to that person. So make sure you fill out that beneficiaries and you understand how they work. And one of the final points is called the 10-10 rule. And this is through the Uniformed Services Former Spouse Act, called the USFSPA, because the military is huge on acronyms. And what this says is it does not automatically entitle a former spouse to a portion of the military's retired pay. And so I'm going to read it verbatim here. A member and former spouse must have been married to each other for 10 years or more, during which the member performed at least 10 years of military service creditable towards retirement eligibility. So if you were performing service creditable towards the retirement for 10 years, but you were only married 8 of those, well, then that can change. And it doesn't mean that you can't divide up your other assets to make up for that. So there are ways to work around that. It just states that it's not guaranteed from that account. So I think those are the big things to cover today, is just so that people know that there are differences, and it's really important to be aware of it and do some planning before you make that leap. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Cathy. Yeah, Cathy told me this information a couple months ago, and I had never known about it. And I was like, oh my gosh. We did a special Face Live event a couple months ago about it, because I was like, man, we need to get this out here. I'm sure some people know about it, but I just didn't. So I just want to make sure everybody else did. And so now we've talked about financial accounts. So your largest asset is often your house. So Ken is not here to talk about real estate. But I am going to share with you what I know about the current real estate market from listening to Ken and other real estate agents over the past month or so. And what I can tell you is that houses are going for at least 10 grand over asking price. There are at least 5 showings a day on houses. Every house is getting at least 30 offers. It's a horrible time to be a buyer. Other than, the good interest rates. It's a really, really hard time to be a buyer because there are so few houses, and they're just the same amount of people who want to buy a house. In fact, I was looking at statistics yesterday for the Twin Cities, and right now there is only less than 1 month of supply of homes on the market. And so what that means is if no new homes come on the market during the next 3 weeks, then there will be no homes on the market. Normally, there is a 6 month supply of homes. So we have 1/6 less homes on the market than what there ideally or normally are. So that's why it is a seller's market, and you'll get top dollar for your house if you want to sell your house during the divorce process. Like, it'll be awesome. But, if one of you is going to keep the house and then the other person needs to buy a house, the person who's buying a house is going to be hurting. And I've heard a lot of mortgage bankers suggest that maybe you should rent for a year and see what happens. However, I've also read that it doesn't look like the housing values are going to decrease during the next year. Nobody has a crystal ball, so nobody can say for sure. But I've heard from a lot of real estate agents and read in articles that considering the supply and demand, that the houses are actually priced well. So they're not expected to go down in price during the next year. So what this means for people who, are wanting to buy houses is that, not only are you going to have to qualify for the appraisal price, but you are going to have to qualify for more than the appraisal price or have cash for that amount over the appraisal price, because you can only get a loan for the appraisal price. And so that's, perhaps when you're divorcing, where you might want to allow the other party to, say, keep all of the retirement fund that has 250,000 in it. And then, you know, the 50,000 of equity in the home. And then you take, $300,000 of cash, and you can, you'll have the extra money that you need to cover what's called the appraisal gap, which is the gap between the appraised value of the home and what you're going to actually have to pay to get that house, because the market's so crazy. And so if you're not in a situation where you have extra cash and you're going to be able to pay that appraisal gap, then either you're going to have to lower the value of the house that you're going to buy, or you might have to just take yourself out of the real estate market for now. And Ken Colston, whose contact information will be in the post for this live event, he can definitely advise you on what you should do. And another thing about the housing market right now, people are still taking COVID precautions. So, don't worry about selling your house. And let's see what else. Yeah, I think that covers the real estate part of it. That's all the stuff that I'm remembering from all the real estate presentations I've listened in on lately. So Cathy, could you please talk to us about what you know about mortgages, since you are a financial person, And of course, specifically what you know about VA. Oh, actually, I do have one more thing that I learned about VA loans. And I just learned this yesterday. And that is, so I should have, finished that sentence. And Kathy, could you also tell us especially about VA loans? And and so I have one thing that I learned yesterday that I was like, oh man, I totally have to mention that today, and about VA loans. And that is um, that when you are putting an offer in on a house right now using a VA loan, it's very sad because some homeowners, because they're getting flooded with offers, they won't even entertain an offer that's a VA loan, because VA loans take longer to process. And gosh, how did the real estate agent explain this to me? I am forgetting the details of why, but there is something that is less advantageous to the seller of the home with a VA loan. And so a fair amount of house sellers are not even accepting VA loan offers. And she said, this real estate agent said that the best thing that you can do if you want to use your VA loan right now is hope that someone who is a military person or veteran is selling the house. Write I guess what's called love letter to the owner of the house, saying I'm a veteran or I'm in the military, and I just love your house. And, I know I'm using a VA loan and it's, a little less desirable, but please consider my offer. And that will be the best chance you have of getting a house seller to accept your offer with a VA loan, because you guys have that camaraderie, that shared experience. And she said that's about really the best way to get your offer accepted if you have a VA loan. FHA loans are also more difficult to get house house sellers to accept, because again, there's something with that process that's a little more cumbersome. So it's VA loans and FHA loans that are less desirable. Yeah. So, okay, Kathy, now if you could explain the mortgage stuff, thank you so much.
Thank you. That's some good and important information, and it is very sad. It's my thought that the FHA and the VA loans have a stricter inspection guideline. So that depending on, if you're the seller, if you think you can pass all those inspections very easily, well, then it shouldn't be an issue. If you're going to have trouble with inspections, mold or lead-based paint, things like that, then you just have to, realize that there are service members and find a way to work with them with their VA loan. And when we're looking at VA mortgages, there's a few things that I am aware of. It's not my area of expertise, but there's no down payment. It doesn't mean that you can't make a down payment, it just means you don't have to. Sometimes it may be advantageous to make a down payment and lower your monthly payment, that no matter what happens, you can continue to make that payment. So that's something that we look at. There's also no PMI insurance with a VA loan, which can also lower that monthly payment, and you could have lower closing costs. So those are some of the benefits of the VA loan. One more thing I want to add in there that some of the veterans or military people may not know is that your property taxes, when you're looking at your property taxes, make sure that they know you're military, because you get that discounted. You pay almost no property tax. You do pay some, but it's like very, very small compared to what your average civilian will pay. So that's a benefit of the military that some don't know to look at, and they go on paying that high rate of property tax. And when you're doing a mortgage, looking at a VA loan, look for a mortgage person that's specialized in VA loans, like Dave Jamison. I think it's important, and it's important for all of us to work together in each of our own specialties to really give you a good plan for your future. Thank you, Christie.
Awesome. Thanks for all that great information about mortgages. And so we've got the mortgages and the houses and the retirement accounts. And so those are all of the things that you guys own that you're going to have to divide during the divorce. And as far as the division of the debts, we're going to talk about that together, like I said. And then after the divorce process, Cathy is not done with you yet. And so, Cathy, please tell folks how you will help military and veteran folks after the divorce.
Oh, that's the best part. That's the part where you get to walk into your new home and get that moment. Like, I did it, and you're on your way to a new future. And that's where we really sit down and make a plan, a financial plan for your future. We'll come up with a budget for you, a budget that works for you, that allows you to do the fun things that you want to do. At the same time, save for retirement or save for those special events, whether it's college for your kids or weddings or a trip, and make that budget and do that planning to make sure that no matter what happens, if we go through a pandemic, if you lose your job, if you become disabled, that you're going to be able to make your payments and continue to support yourself and your loved ones in the manner that you want to. And that's, to me, the funnest part of what I do, is sharing those fun experiences with you. Thank you, Christie.
Awesome. And yep, that's the reward at the end of the divorce, after hashing through all of the financial details, and if you have children, the children details. And that could be a process where I've had clients who they didn't have kids, but it only took an hour. And I've had clients who have kids that it only took like 4 hours to hash through everything. But I've also had clients who have taken up to 72 hours over a 4-month period to hash out everything. So at the end of that, you are ready for celebration. Some people have divorce parties. It's mostly women, maybe. But yeah, so it's going to be, just remember that your current situation is not your final destination. And I'm quite sure that folks who have served in the military understand that probably better than a lot of us do. You've gone through much harder things than this, and with less support than our team of professionals can offer you. I'm sure you didn't have all that support when you were serving active duty in other countries, or maybe even if you're in the National Guard here in the United States. So I am not seeing any questions on the post. So please definitely contact us if you have any questions about the legalities or the financial aspects of divorce and separation for military and veteran folks. And, all of us offer no cost initial consultations. And I know at the end of all of my initial consultations, my clients or prospective clients always feel better, because, knowing is half of the battle when you're facing something that you haven't faced before, or maybe you have faced it before, but it's going to be not a fun thing. So Kathy, do you have any parting words?
One thing I'd like people to know, when you become a client, when we work together, like Christie said, we don't end at the divorce. You continue to be a client for life. So, and that's important because I want to make sure that you make it through each stage of your life, and that at any point, if you have a question, you can call me or reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer that question. And there's no charge for those types of questions or calls or emails. And so it's important. You've served us, our country, for so long, and it's just important for all of us to serve you. Thank you.
We definitely thank you for your service, and we look forward to serving you. Have a great rest of your Friday.